All right, let's dive right in. We're going to tackle one of the biggest, most important ideas in all of science, evolution. And our mission today is simple: to give you a 100% accurate, no-nonsense guide to how it all works, from the very first theories to the incredible proof we have today.
You know, it all comes down to one massive question. Just look around you. From a tiny ant to a giant redwood tree, from fish in the deep ocean to birds in the sky. How did we get all this? How did life on this planet become so unbelievably, spectacularly diverse? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to piece together.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll get the basic blueprint of evolution down. Then, we'll meet the three thinkers who really built this idea: Lamarck, the pioneer; Darwin, the revolutionary; and de Vries, who found a key missing piece. And to wrap it all up, we're going to put on our paleontologist hats and dig into the cold, hard fossil evidence that proves it all.
Okay, first things first. Before we even start talking about names like Darwin, we need to be absolutely crystal clear on what evolution even is. What are we talking about at the most fundamental level?
The official term is organic evolution, and really you can think of it as a two-part idea. Part 1, living things change over many, many generations. They get modified. Part 2, everything is connected. All life on Earth ultimately descends from common ancestors. So it's a story about deep time, constant change, and a single gigantic family tree.
And I gotta stress, this is not an overnight process. We are talking about a time scale that is almost impossible to wrap your head around. Millions upon millions of years. Life started out pretty simple, but over these vast stretches of time, it slowly, gradually morphed and branched out into the amazing complexity we see all around us today.
So who was the first person to actually try and build a full-blown scientific theory to explain all this change? Well, our story starts with a French biologist who really set the stage for everything that came after.
This is Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. Now, he was one of the very first to formally propose that species weren't fixed, that they could actually change. And his big idea? That what an animal did during its life, its efforts, its struggles, could directly change its body, and that those changes would then be passed on to its kids. For its time, that was a mind-blowing concept.
So Lamarck's thinking went something like this. He thought there was some kind of internal force pushing life to get more complex. He also believed the environment created a need for an animal to change. And that led to his most famous concept, use and disuse. Basically, if you used a body part a lot, it would get bigger and stronger. If you didn't use it, it would shrink and disappear. Simple enough, right? And the kicker was that these changes, these acquired traits, were passed down.
The classic example everyone uses to explain Lamarck is the giraffe. He imagined that ancient giraffes had short necks, but they were always stretching, straining to reach the high-up leaves on trees. Over a lifetime of stretching, their necks got just a little bit longer. And according to Lamarck, they passed that slightly longer neck on to their babies, who then stretched some more, and so on and so on.
Now, Lamarck's idea was a brilliant first attempt, a huge step forward. But as it turns out, the mechanism just wasn't quite right. And that brings us to the guy whose name is basically synonymous with evolution, and to an idea that didn't just change biology, it changed the world.
Of course, we're talking about Charles Darwin. In 1859, he dropped a bombshell on the world, his book, On the Origin of Species. In it, he laid out a powerful, elegant, and crucially testable mechanism for how evolution actually happens. He called it natural selection.
Darwin's logic is so beautiful because it's like a four-step formula. First, overproduction. Pretty much all creatures have way more offspring than can possibly survive. That leads directly to step 2, a struggle for existence, a competition for resources. Now, within any population, there's variation. Some individuals just happen to be born with traits that give them a tiny edge. That leads to step 3, survival of the fittest. And finally, those survivors get to pass on their winning traits to the next generation. It's that simple and that powerful.
Okay, so let's put these two ideas side by side, because this is the absolute key difference. For Lamarck, change was intentional. It was driven by the needs and efforts of the animal. A giraffe tried to get a longer neck. For Darwin, change is totally random. Giraffes are just born with different neck lengths by complete chance. There's no trying involved. Nature then just selects the ones whose neck length happens to be a good fit for the environment. It's a huge shift from purposeful striving to random variation plus selection.
Now, Darwin was a genius, but there was one massive puzzle he couldn't solve. He had no idea how traits were passed down or where these random variations even came from. He didn't know about genes or DNA.
That piece came later with the science of genetics. What we have today is called neo-Darwinism, which is basically the superpowered version. It's Darwin's original idea of natural selection combined with everything we now know about genetics, mutation, and heredity. It's the complete picture.
And that word I just mentioned, mutation, is everything. It is the raw fuel for the engine of evolution. And the scientists who really figured this part out added another critical layer to our story.
Enter Hugo de Vries. So this guy is studying a plant called the evening primrose. And as he's watching them, generation after generation, he sees something really weird. Every once in a while, a totally new type of primrose would just pop up out of nowhere. A sudden, big change. He's the one who gave these spontaneous leaps a name, mutations.
So de Vries realized that these mutations are the source of all newness in the biological world. They're the raw material. They just happen, totally at random, and they can be passed on. This was the missing piece for Darwin's theory. This is where the variation comes from. Mutations create the options, and then natural selection picks the winners.
Okay, so we've got these incredible theories from Lamarck, Darwin, and de Vries. But talk is cheap, right? Where's the proof? How do we know this actually happened? For that, my friends, we have to become time-traveling detectives and look at the clues buried in the rock.
And we need to go way back to the Mesozoic era, better known as the Age of Reptiles. We're talking about a time when dinosaurs ruled the Earth for almost 200 million years. It's in the rocks from this period that we find some of the most jaw-dropping, slam-dunk evidence for evolution you could ever ask for.
I want you to meet what might be the most important fossil ever found. This is Archaeopteryx. It's what scientists call a transitional fossil, and it's basically the smoking gun of evolution. Why? Because it's a perfect mix between two totally different groups. Look at this. On the reptile side, it's got teeth in its beak, a long bony tail, and claws on its wings. But on the bird side, it's covered in feathers, and it has wings and a wishbone. It's a reptile, it's a bird. It's evolution caught in the act.
1,600 cubic centimeters. Take a look at that number. Let it sink in for a second. What in the world could that be a measurement of?
That number. That was the average brain size of the Cro-Magnon people. They lived around 40,000 years ago, and they are our direct ancestors. Their bodies, their brains, they were so much like us that we classify them as the exact same species, Homo sapiens. This isn't just some abstract story about ancient animals. The evidence leads directly to us. And that really brings us to the biggest takeaway. Evolution isn't some historical event that's over and done with. The fossil record shows us it's a story of non-stop, continuous change. It's happening right now, all around us, and even inside us, which leaves us with one last huge question to think about. In a world of modern medicine, global travel, and a rapidly changing climate, what does the next chapter of human evolution even look like? What chapter are we writing right now?